Hi, everyone. Welcome to this message this week. Um, in our churches, we've been coming together for in person, in the building worship. And we realize that we're not back to normal, that we still have to engage in the practices that keep us safe, such as wearing masks, practicing social distancing, not singing in our environment so as to not spread air droplets. And this has caused anxiety to come up. Um, we so wanted just to be back to normal and church as we know it, but we're acknowledging through our life together, through discussions with our people and our leadership, that we're not back to normal. And we may never be back to normal in our communities or in our churches. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I really believe that God is calling us in the church to do something new. When Jesus was asked in the Gospel of Matthew by the Pharisee, by a lawyer, what are the greatest commandments? He quotes Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus chapter 19 and 18, and he's saying um, the first commandment is love God with all your heart, mind, strength, soul. Love him with all you have. And the second is like that, love your neighbor as yourself. And we read this not only in our Old Testament scriptures, but in the gospel message as well. In other words, the greatest commandment, Jesus says, is to love the divine in our life, love the reality that is God, love that creative, transforming power, um, uh, and also to love ourselves and love others. As we think about what is God calling us to do in the church, new and different, it must come from this place. It must come from of an understanding that as a community of faith in Christ, um, uh, we start with this center, with this origin of love. Uh, Engaging in the spiritual practices such as worship, devotions, prayer, fasting, all of this fellowship, all these things that connect us to the experience of the divine. And we need to answer this call to be loving to not only God and in our devotion, and but loving to ourselves, giving ourselves um, forgiveness and mercy and grace. And then from that perspective, we're able to love others and give them the gift of that type of love and devotion. What would the churches look like if instead of empty rooms, instead of empty spaces, the churches became centers where the communities gathered? You know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Way back when, a generation or two, people did not have a lot of the social interaction that we have. Right now, we can get on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We can see all sorts of social interactions. We can have Zoom meetings with people all over the world. But back in the day, people were on their property, they were on their farms, they worked locally. They didn't necessarily see a lot of people. They couldn't engage in fellowship and activities of that nature. So church became the center of the community. Church became, many people have described as the social life, right? That's where you went to worship together, to sing together, to pray together, but also to have fun together and to have a coffee and to have some sweets that people brought or share a meal, right? It was the community life center. What if churches return to that? As we think about how to minister in this new world, this emerging post quarantine world, where we're still wearing masks and we're still being careful, but how do we minister to people? How do we reinvigorate um, the people wanting to come back and engage in church? So I think we're in that place that people are isolated in their homes. People are wanting the fellowship. People are tired of meeting people on Zoom in that little square box. That's not interaction on a social level. People want more, and I think that if we recognize this in the church, we can then begin to rebuild. I was in a meeting this week, and a person said to me, that we're in that part in our communities and our work that we have to rebuild. And I loved that word. We do have to rebuild our focus on mission and ministry. And if we start in that area that Jesus tells us to love God with all we have and love our neighbor as ourselves, we can then engage in effective, life transforming ministry, because it is our love in action through our faith and empowered through our relationship with Christ and in the power of the Holy Spirit, right? Um, what if our uh, what if our churches, instead of being empty rooms on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and instead of being empty rooms during the week, they became centers where people could come and have interactions, have fellowship. I'm thinking of one area. I'm thinking, how do we get support groups in the churches? Uh, AA, NA, cancer survivor groups, a young mothers club, an over 65 club. A lot of time in churches, they were called the Mr. and Mrs. Clubs for young families and things like that. Um, how do we get those moments where we can have fellowship? One of our churches this week, we had an over 65 gathering. There was about six of us in the room or so. I was allowed to come in. I'm 58, but I was allowed to participate. But we had fellowship and we talked, and it helped with the isolation. It helped just being together safely, um, and having conversation. Uh, can you imagine a church like this where something is going on every day? Something valid is going on every day. A support group for young moms to get out of the house, to have adult conversation, to have a safe area for the kids to play, um, and a safe environment, and just have time together and discuss what's going on. See, that's the key. If we're together with people that are going through the same chapter of our lives, if they're going through similar things to us, we can find support and love and care in each other's experience. And we can lift each other up just by letting people know, hey, I'm going through it too, and this is what I do. And it can be life transforming. Um, what if we just met uh, and did checkers? What if we came together with a game day? So on Thursdays at 11, the church was just open, and whoever was around came and they shared their checkers or their chess. They shared maybe a puzzle, or they shared some cards, and played a game of cards. Or even sat there among others and did a game of solitaire. It's really about just having time that breaks through that isolation and that loneliness. I think that we are dealing with that. We're dealing with loneliness on a profound level. We're dealing with collective trauma as a community as we are more and more isolated, excuse me, and continue to be more and more isolated. Um, I, Everyday something's going on in the church. Every day, the groups are meeting to help each other, to lift each other up. Now, many of you know I'm the chaplain in the fire department. Perhaps we invite the fire department to hold a CPR class or to hold a first aid class or a public safety class. What to do when you're approaching an accident and see emergency vehicles in the road. How to call in an emergency if you were to see something. What's important in the moment, right? um, there's an example of an organization in the community that could come and help us reach people. If we're doing this, if we're having these groups, if we're doing this work, we will have moments to share our faith. We will have moments to talk to people about how our faith guides us in life. But it must come from this place of love. It must come from, hey, I know what you're going through, and I want to help. I want to just be positive in your life. I want to listen. I want to hear about your isolation and do something. Again, that love in action, reflecting our faith and our journey of connection with the divine. So I invite you this week to reflect on how to make the church that place that it once was, the hub of the social life, the hub of a community center that becomes vital. We've had historical societies in the town meet in the churches. And all of a sudden, there's 60 people, 70 people in the pews learning about an aspect of the history of the town. We've had hospitals come in, Maine Medical Center, and do surveys and actually run classes that they set up, cooking classes, nutrition classes, um, uh, young mothers class or a pregnancy class in the churches. This is the type of new ministry that I really do feel after talking with many of our parishioners that God is calling us to do. In Matthew 28:16-20, Jesus gives his disciples authority. He says, I've been given all authority in heaven, and I confer this authority to you. I give this authority to you. Go and preach, go and baptize in my name, go and teach people what I have taught you. In other words, Jesus is saying, be preachers, be healers, be menders of brokenness and mend and put together, put back together. Do not tear down, but build up. Be there for each other. Be there in fellowship and in community. Be there in love. Listen. Spend time with. Connect. Isn't that the bottom line? We through our life want to connect. And we know the detriment of loneliness and being separated. The pandemic has once again shown us that. But there is power in connection. There is power in reaching out in love to others to help them break through their isolation, break through their fear, give them a place of safety, give them a place of comfort. And if along the way we can share our faith story, then it's all the more sweeter. If we can share with people how God has shaped and changed us, then that's a wonderful thing. So this week, I ask you to reflect on what is God calling you to do as an individual and us to do as churches and as religious centers. How can we be that hub of the social life once again in a new world that desperately needs love and connection? I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening to me today. And I hope this message has brought you blessings and has challenged you to think about some things for yourself. And just every week, you're a blessing to me that I know people are listening, people are enjoying the messages. And it's so interesting to me. I've had people from different countries that I know, Spain, um, and England and Ireland and different places in New England and different places around the United States that have contacted me and said they've tuned into a message. Um, so it's been exciting to me that our messages are getting out. So thank you again, and God bless. And I hope you have a wonderful, God filled week. Thank you.